Hey, good morning and welcome everybody. You're tuned in to WIDU 1600 and you're watching The Fierce Urgency of Now. Welcome, I'm your host, Councilmember Shaun McMillan. And we have an exciting show this morning. We have a full show, got a lot to talk about. Want to first start with a note of thanks. One of the things I've realized over the last, this is now the 5th episode. There's a lot of people that are joining us, a lot of people engaged. I can look on Facebook and see in the comments, a lot of comments, sometimes adding additional context and information, sometimes questions. What I've noticed is that over the last 5 episodes now, this has become one of the most watched shows on the station. And I really feel like there are some shared values that align a lot of us. Who are having these conversations about issues that sometimes don't get touched or addressed in the ways that they should in public. And I just want to start with thanks for everybody that's tuning in regularly, everybody that's staying engaged, and especially everybody that is continuing the conversations long after the show, that's taking their thoughts, their opinions to City Council and really impacting the path that this city takes towards progress and change. This morning we are in a little bit different position than normal. Normally we come in the show after a council meeting. So usually there's a Monday night. We have these sometimes 3 or 4 hour council meetings, and then we come on the show and it's a very reactive agenda. The last show I think was very, very highly watched, probably the most highly watched show that we've had so far. We had Fayetteville Freedom for All on, and we talked about the vote for a pause on data centers. We talked about a missed opportunity on behalf of the city to move towards a moratorium. And much of the sense of the show was a reaction to what had just happened the night before. And this morning, we are actually coming in before a council meeting. There'll be a council meeting tonight, which I urge everybody to attend at 6:30 at City Hall or at least watch. And there are some things I want to talk about later that are on the agenda tonight. But we also have an opportunity to really, in a non-reactive way, in a proactive way, to talk about data center moratoriums, something that is going to be on the agenda again on June 1st. And something that my special guest this morning has a lot to say about. I've respected a lot of the knowledge that she's imparted. I've respected a lot of what I've heard in terms of common sense reasons why we should pause before inviting the harm of data centers. And just want to welcome my guest, Ms. Tara Kamiya. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I just want to start off just with a check-in to see how you are, how you're feeling. I know we were just talking about your Knicks a couple of minutes ago. And the sense that probably most New Yorkers have. But I want to give you a chance just to say how you're doing this morning and what's your general energy like today.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Go Knicks, Knicks in 4. I'm very excited. Obviously, native New Yorker, but Fayetteville is my home now. So I am a Fayetteville resident. I'm a homeowner here, a business owner. And it's been a great year so far. You know, we're hammering away on the things that matter to us. We're trying to get some more money in our pockets. We're trying to get some really good, healthy food in our bellies. Shout out to Angela Tatum for her amazing work with gardening and teaching the community how to garden. Just really happy to be here and be a part of Fayetteville. And I think we all want the best Fayetteville, so I'm checking in to make sure that happens.
Right on. Thank you for doing that. I've noticed that you've been pretty vocal about the development of Fayetteville, about Fayetteville coming up and advancing, progressing. We were talking right before the show just about the idea that it takes something to compel people sometimes to talk, to share, especially when you're talking about values. In a time of isolation, as today is, many of us will have an opinion and will hold that opinion. Maybe hit like on a Facebook post at the most. And what I note is that you've been sharing some very, very powerful data, some very powerful facts. And I wonder what your path was to being somebody who was willing and compelled to share and be civically active. So could you talk about what brought you to Fayetteville, and then on top of that, what brought you to be actively engaged as a resident of Fayetteville?
Sure. When I moved to Fayetteville, a lot of people asked me that question, why are you here? And I said, why not? I was living in Japan, and my husband and I moved here for a business opportunity. We had moved from Japan to Charlotte, and then we got a call about a business opportunity, so we moved for the business opportunity. And when I got here, I said, wow, this is not the Vietnam from the 90s, because I went to St. Aug and we heard about Vietnam. I have tons of friends from Fayetteville and family members who live here. And I have a rich history in military service in my family. And so after getting here, I said, you can work with this. This is like actually a legitimate town, and people are working hard, and there's creativity. And so I really wanted to be a part of that. Once I got settled in Fayetteville, I said, okay, now it's time to do my civic duty. Yeah. And so I was always searching for something where I can help and contribute. I talked to Stacy from Off-Road Outreach. I talked to United Way, and I was still trying to find my legs in terms of how I could contribute. Yeah. And so some months ago, I heard about bringing a data center to there was banter about bringing a data center to Fayetteville, and I said, I don't think this is a good idea. So I started to do my research. I've got my resource materials here. I started to, go to different events, and so here I am, just really positioning myself in this space as someone who is a conduit of information, right? I always say to people who I support and that I converse with, I'm not for data centers. I'm not against data centers. Let's look at it and see what it's all about first. And then we can start making some decisions. So that's where I am.
Right on. I appreciate that. That's one things that I've noted. There's a wide spectrum in terms of outlook on data centers. What I see is there are a lot of people who recognize the reasons why we should slow down and really take a look at the data and the information. When I say a wide spectrum, I've noticed there are some folks that are so engaged with tech that they've actually worked in the tech industry and have like this amount of knowledge from actually being in the tech industry of the harms that it could bring, the reasons why we need regulation. And then there are some people on the other end of the spectrum who are like, not now, not ever.
Right.
Some people
very
are
passionate.
Like, I'm using my flip phone and
right. I'm churning butter. Right.
I'm raising my own vegetables. There are people on that end of the spectrum, and they're still joining in a chorus of people that are saying we need to take a look at information. Can I hear from you? What are the events that you've been involved in, and what are the times when you've seen opportunities to speak up, and maybe times when the community has spoken up over the last several months on data centers?
Well, my first introduction was meeting Lizette Rodriguez, and I know that she is the founder of Fayetteville Freedom for All. And once I saw what their efforts were, I kind of went down this rabbit hole of being wrapped up in data center events and tech events. And so the first actual thing that I went to outside of Fayetteville was at NC State. There was, I have my notes here because I want to get it right. I went to this forum. It was called Energy Needs for AI Data Centers. It was actually a workshop, and it was sponsored by the MC Dean Engineering Hub. That was in March. And so at that event, I actually sat with engineers from all over the world. I sat with them, and I sat through an entire presentation of how the data centers are actually built. And so once I sat with that, I said, oh my goodness, I know that people don't know this, and I have to bring this information back to Fayetteville and share it with the group, in particular Lizette and her group, but anybody who would listen. But I didn't stop there. The next thing I went to was the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. They had a meeting.
Okay.
I sat in Greensboro for 2 days at a workshop. And I learned again what's happening all over North Carolina. So this isn't a Fayetteville thing. This isn't a North Carolina thing. It's a world, this is a global event.
Yeah.
We are at the precipice of the 5th industrial revolution, and we all need to be concerned about this situation. Right. And then just recently, I was in New York for about a month, and I sat at the United Nations, which is unreal for me to even say, but I was at the United Nations, and there was a discussion, there was a global dialogue about artificial intelligence governance. So, you know, people are really planning to implement AI, this new technology, build these data centers, and we need to get serious about it. Right. And so that's what I hope to share here, you know, the information that I've learned and brought back.
Right on. I appreciate that. I also recall seeing you at a Fayetteville event, FCEDC, and that's when my ears perked up when you were asking some of the questions, some of the pointed questions that had to do with what the data was saying. Some of the things that weren't necessarily coming out in that briefing. Do you remember that time?
Of course, yes. Hey, Robert. So I jumped up and got very, very New York and very passionate because, you know, one thing I don't like is I don't like people trying to, as the kids say, play in the face of people in Fayetteville. Don't play in people's faces. They want to know what's going to happen if this data center is built. Will my bills go up? Will our water get polluted? Is there going to be dust in the air? Are you going to blow a hole in my ground? And so these are the things that matter to people. They don't care about, I mean, a lot of people don't even care what the data center is doing. There's many conversations going on. A lot of residents are very concerned about the environment.
Yes.
And so their concerns should be addressed.
Yes.
This is why they elected the people they elected and put them in office, because they trusted that their concerns would be heard and addressed. Yeah. And so I stood up at that meeting to kind of step in front of everyone in Fayetteville and say, listen, this is what they want to hear. We don't need to know the history of data centers. We need to know how it is going to directly affect our population here. Yes,
thank you. Thank you for your courage in that moment, and then also for the information that you were bringing. I appreciate the opportunity to be in that room. Like, I realized that didn't have to happen from the FCEDC. And shout out to Robert for making that space. But then there were some things I noted as well. There was a Duke executive from the power industry that was talking a lot about specs and the differences between data centers. And of course, by that time, I'd already seen Rashad's petition. I think it was close to 2,000 people from Fayetteville had said they were concerned about this proposed ESS data center. By that time, I knew what a moratorium was. By that time, I knew that there were other communities in North Carolina that were talking about the harms. They were talking about the environment. This was also, when we were in that FCEDC meeting, this was also after our strategic planning session for the city, the first one. And one of the things I noted, if you look at Fayetteville, we talk a lot about the future and economic drivers. We talk about a lot of things through a prosperity lens. But when you look at this community lens and our resources and our environment, there is a lack of conversation and concern about what Fayetteville looks like in the future. Right. We have all these things happening globally. Price of gas, we're paying $4 per gallon and more. Yes. We're in a drought here in North Carolina. Yes. We've already had these incidences where our water has been poisoned, the Cape Fear River. And to not have a plan for what our environment looks like and our resources and how we're moving towards renewable energy, there's things that are missing from the conversation. And I realize that in this very prosperity lens oriented conversation around specs and around the business side of data centers, there was something missing on the harms that it could bring. I want to ask if you could speak towards what you've learned, what's stood out to you most in your research about data centers. And I don't want to confine you just to the negatives.
Right.
If there are some positives, I need to hear those as well, because what is most loud to me and most concerning to me has been the harms. I have not heard as compelling argument for benefits, but I would love to hear what the data has shown you overall.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first let me say this. The greatest investment that any community, any town can make is in their people. So when we start talking about investments, what do the schools look like? What does the education level look like? All of the wealthy people in town can send their children to very good universities, but are they returning to build up Fayetteville? That is something that is very important first. Then we can start thinking about other investments. This is my opinion. I'm not an elected official. You have not elected me. This is just my opinion. But what I'm seeing from the research and the books that I have here to show, just in case anybody else is interested in where they can find information about this fifth industrial revolution, is the conversation we're not having is what has to happen for the data center to be built. What has to happen for us to advance in technology? No one is telling you that they have to blow a hole in the ground to build this thing. They're not telling you that they have to install new gas lines. They're not telling you that all of this is going to kick up dust. That dust is going to go into the water supply. It's going to destroy your hot water heaters. These are things that we're not discussing. And so I would say this, it's also disingenuous to say that the people who are against the data center are just fist shakers, as I call them. We don't want it, we don't want it. That is disingenuous. The people who are against the data center are well educated. They are scientists, they are plumbers, they are electricians. They know what they're saying. We all are experiencing the same economy. Maybe your business is slow. Maybe you can't afford the gas to, or take your children out. Nobody is turning down millions of dollars just because. So if everyone in town is saying, or a good majority, a Gallup poll says that only 27% of Americans support data center development. So there's that. But if so many people are saying no, let's find out why they're saying no, and then let's turn it around. You tell me why it's a yes. I haven't found the yeses. The only positive thing that I've heard about building this infrastructure, and as the developers call them assets, is the money. There's money in a lot of places. I can help you find it. There's many ways to get money into the town. I consider the data center to be a lazy investment, and I think that there are not enough yeses that are going to outweigh the nos in the long run.
That reminds me of something a friend of mine, and shout out Cynthia Swinson-Leaks, who's a community leader in this part of town.
Yes.
She, to the council, said all that glitters is not gold. All money ain't good money. There are investments that we could make in our future with a prosperity lens that don't bring the harm the data centers bring. So to lump them in as just another investment is, I like the word disingenuous. It's missing something. And I like the charge that you're giving to show us, like, if you're really supportive of data centers, show us the benefits and show us what you will do to address the harm. That's one thing that I haven't heard thoroughly from the proponents, from the people that are inviting the harm in. What are the measures that we're willing to put in place for the community to protect us? I do want to shout out also Fayetteville Freedom for All for making some spaces over the last few months for teach-ins. I appreciate the efforts to mobilize folks. Very pleased with what I've seen in the mobilizations and getting people out to the county.
Yes,
I think that
it's been
has
fantastic.
That has made a difference.
Yes, and so those same people need to meet us at the polls.
Oh, let's talk about
those
that.
Same people.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. I want to say something in terms of the leadership here in Fayetteville. Shout out to Mayor Colvin. Not too much on Mayor Colvin. I know a lot of people love to hate him, and I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm his biggest fan. But I really want us to ease up on Mayor Colvin because he has a city to run.
Yeah.
He's not expected to become an expert in data centers and tech. He's supposed to have a dedicated team around him who is informing him of what decisions might be right for Fayetteville. Yeah. And there's a whole city council, shout out to city council, District 2. Yeah. There's a whole city council. Almost everybody in town is a judge. We have the judges, we have the county commissioners. There are other people in leadership who are responsible for running this town. Yeah. Mayor Colvin is not operating with impunity. Right. If you are not happy with what's happening here, you need to show up at the polls. You had your chance to get Mayor Colvin out if that's what you wanted. Yeah. Right? And so this is why I have to go ahead and shield him a little bit because it's incorrect to just let him stand out front and take the darts. There's at least 24 people in this town who make really, really important decisions, and that includes the wealthy citizens of Fayetteville. We can build a medical center, we can build up the theater house. There's other things that we can do with our money. Yeah, thank you for saying that, and thank you for bringing up voting and accountability. Absolutely. Accountability is what it comes down to. I'm going to take a step further in terms of don't just boo, vote. Exactly. Remember that one? How about don't just vote? Hold us accountable all year round, at every meeting, at every issue like this that comes up, where there is a need for leadership, where there is a need to maybe steer a clear path, where there is a need to shield the community from harm. When I see people show up in droves to the county, when I see a full house at a city council, and I know that those people are there to speak not only to Mayor Colvin, but to Councilmember McMillan. Yes. And when I see such a clear voice from the community as they've been on this data center issue, lets me know that people are getting the message that we need to have accountability throughout the year, not just when it's time to vote. We're about to go into our first and only break for the show. Thank you again, Tara, for all your knowledge and wisdom that you're bringing to the show. When we get back, we're going to continue to talk a little bit about data centers. We're also going to talk about something that is connected to data centers, a surveillance tech. What is Fayetteville using now? What are the dollar amounts and resources that we're putting towards this infrastructure of surveillance? And then how is that connected to data centers? When we come back on the other side of Fierce Urgency of Now, we'll continue the conversation. Thank you all again.
Battleship North Carolina held its 62nd annual Memorial Day ceremony on Monday, honoring those who lost their lives in the service of their country. More than a dozen veterans attended a Memorial Day service at the Charlotte Cemetery on Monday, and 100 of their neighbors stood alongside of them. The annual Memorial Day service at Yosemite Cemetery and Memorial Gardens took place. President Donald Trump honored fallen service members during a Memorial Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery on Monday. Meanwhile, flying in the air, Secretary of State Marco Rubio discussed the Strait of Hormuz with reporters today. Investigation is underway after a boy was shot in Elizabeth City on Monday afternoon. No word on his condition. He was taken to the hospital. A search operation for 7 villagers trapped inside of a flooded cave in central Laos enters its 7th day. Mike Rayleigh, NCI News.
I'm Jamie Vanaselli, WIDU Radio News. The North Carolina Department of Transportation will temporarily close a section of King Road beginning May 27th for construction of a new roundabout near the future Rockfish Village Shopping Center. That closure is set to remain in place through early July. Drivers are encouraged to use King Road, Mesquite Drive, and Stony Point Road as a detour during construction. The Cumberland County Sheriff's Office says 39-year-old Lindsay Pascal of Lillington has been identified as the victim of the homicide homicide that occurred on May 25th in the wooded area at the end of Barrow Drive in Fayetteville. Her next of kin has been notified. Arrested and charged is 47-year-old Dominic Smith of Fayetteville, charged with first-degree murder. Smith was processed at the Cumberland County Detention Center and held on a denied bond. If you have any information about the investigation, you are asked to call the sheriff's office at 910-677-5463. From WIDU Radio, I'm Jamie Monticelli.
Another day with some of the most humid air of 2026 so far. That is going to lead to the chance for scattered afternoon and evening storms with high temperatures well into the 80s prior to the development of some of those showers and storms. Overnight lows, they'll drop into the upper 60s and lower 70s because of the humidity in place. And by Wednesday, well into the 80s once again, fewer storms compared to Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Chris Michaels in the NCN Weather Center.
Hello, this is Sigma Smith along with Apostle Kenneth and Pastor Fody Smith of Evangel Temple Christian Center at 2633 Wilmington Highway. You're listening to Wake Up.
Florence, South Carolina, get ready. The Tyrone Porter Legacy Showcase weekend is coming June 5th through June 7th, 2026. And this is one weekend you do not want to miss. Friday, June 5th, it's the Lift Every Voice Choir Competition. Calling all choirs and praise teams from Florence and the surrounding areas. This is your moment to take the stage, lift your voice, and represent your ministry. Registration is open now. Saturday, June 6th, the new and up-and-coming artist showcase. Solo artists and groups, come share your gift with the world. You never know who may be in the audience watching. And after the showcase, special guest artists will take the stage. Then, Sunday, June 7th, the grand finale concert featuring powerhouse gospel artists including Roy and Revelation, the Swanee Quintet, the Sensational Wells Brothers, Reverend Shaun Brown and the Boys, Miss Flossie Boyd Johnson and Favor, and many more. This weekend is about legacy, unity, and keeping the vision alive. Mark your calendars now, June 5th through June 7th in Florence, South Carolina. For registration and more information, stay connected and be in the building. The Tyrone Porter Legacy Showcase Weekend, where the legacy lives on.
This is Bishop Johnny Ray Jr. of the Churches of Worship Worldwide, Apostle J.A. McDonough, 2118 Owen Drive. And we are proud to be a part of the Wake Up. Come and join the team.
Special technique. Special technique of shadow boxing. Special technique of shadow boxing.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're tuned in to the Fierce Urgency of Now. I'm your host, Shaun McMillan. We have been talking about data centers. My guest Tara has really been laying down a lot of knowledge in terms of some of the considerations as we, as a public, grapple with whether we want to invite data centers into Cumberland County, into Fayetteville. Want to take a step back and then talk about where the city is in the process. Right now, there have been prospectors since late last year who've been looking at Fayetteville and Cumberland County as a potential home for data centers. We've gone through months, I think, of public education and engagement. Most of it, the public to city officials, and there's an idea that has come forward to take a pause. There's a legal, statutory path to taking a pause that the state has laid out for us. It's called a data center moratorium. And the last month at a regular meeting of the city council, the staff briefed the city council on what that process looks like. We know that we could have a pause that stops all development of data centers. We know that we could have conversations around how long that pause is, how long that moratorium is. We know that we see cities like Durham moving towards what will likely be a 2-year moratorium. We know that some cities have in North Carolina have had lesser time restrictions, even as low as 3 to 6 months. So there's a range of options that is there for the city. At the last regular meeting where this was on the agenda, we did not go down the path of moratorium. The city voted, all but 3 council members voted to do something called a pause, which has no statutory strength at all, doesn't have any teeth. Does seem to be an acknowledgement that we don't need to move towards data centers, but it was less than the statutory path that the staff had laid out for us. On June 1st, during a work session, there will be more discussion about a data center moratorium, and a clean motion on the floor to see which council members will support a data center moratorium, and which are still not ready to commit to this pause that has teeth. I go back and say that because there might be some people that are just tuning in for the first time, may have seen some things on Facebook, but don't know where we stand in the process.
Yeah, the moratorium is, it's touted as this thing where we're wanting to halt development, and I think that's incorrect. The moratorium benefits people who want the data center and people who don't want the data center. Because even if you say yes, let's say everybody in Fayetteville, they woke up this morning, the next one, they said, yes, you know what? I want the data center. Let's go for it. Let's get millions of dollars and let's go have ice cream. Do you know how to say yes? That's a conversation. Okay. Are there people in place now in Fayetteville who know how to do a deal with a billionaire? Are there people who know how to close a deal of this magnitude? So the moratorium allows even the people who want to say yes to this time to get their thoughts together and figure out what are going to be the stipulations. How are we going to put rigor and teeth to this? So it's beneficial to everyone, to be honest. And I think if we look at it that way, then we can kind of loosen our hands from each other's throats concerning this issue, because it's not something where it has to even be negative and malicious. Let's just look at it as it is. Nobody, this is new to everyone on the planet. So, we have to be realistic about that. Can you do a deal of this magnitude? The answer is probably no. And you probably need time to figure it out.
Yeah, to figure out a lot in terms of the environmental protections. Somebody also, I've read some things about community benefits in terms of I don't know if it's a myth. I haven't seen it in action, but in terms of what a corporate citizen is and what community benefits ordinances look like. What do we demand of these multi-billion-dollar industries that already have $75 million tax abatements? They already have the state giving them a write-off to come to this area. What are they giving back to the community? And then also, what are they taking that can't be restored? We really need to look at damage to the water supply. You said something interesting about heat, about the impacts, maybe sometimes irreversible to our environment, and the real-time changes that we could see in Fayetteville. I was wondering if you could speak towards that as well.
Absolutely. 2 things that I wanted to bring up is, what people are not talking about is the emissions. I hear a lot about closed-loop cooling. I hear a lot about the new technology where they're not using as much water. Beloved, there are still emissions. That heat has to go somewhere. And where that heat goes is in the atmosphere. And what happens when that heat goes in the atmosphere is it abnormally warms the surrounding areas. From what I've read, we're talking about a 1 to 4 degree increase in heat in the surrounding area. Now remember, this could make the difference between a freezing temperature and a non-freezing temperature. And when we start playing with temperature, we start playing with our ecology, the surrounding foliage, the animals, our crops. Everything that we need to live is affected by this. So this is something that we really, really need to pay attention to. Closed-loop cooling on the racks, I know it all. I've been in those rooms with the engineers. There are still, and they say it themselves, there's still going to be emissions. So we need to be very, very diligent about understanding, again, how, if we're going to say yes, how are we going to say yes? And what it means when we say yes to the data center coming to our town.
Right on. Thank you for bringing that point through.
Oh, and the second point. Another thing people are not considering is what happens if the developers decide that they don't want to follow through with the project. There's something I wanted to introduce in this conversation. It's called abandoned asset risk. They call these data centers their assets. And if they decide that they don't want to follow through, they just leave. And they know you don't have the power or the resources to sue them. That's something else I just want you guys to put on the back burner and to consider what happens if they don't follow through with building this data center.
Right on. Thank you for bringing that point up. I want to add another interesting layer to this is power grid prioritization. Once we clear the regulatory path in terms of zoning for development, there's a lot of negotiations that happen between PwC and these massive companies. And the model for data centers is to get grid prioritization, meaning they go to the front of the line in terms of the power that they use. So I've heard a lot of pushback against what it would mean for our power bills, but you have this giant new neighbor who dwarfs everybody else in the neighborhood that is in the front of the line for consumption of power. And that's something that is the model, that is the norm.
Yes.
And that's something that's negotiated between these power companies that are already friendly and looking to boost their own capacity and these data centers. And that's something that is something to be aware of and something to have protections against. As well here locally. I want to shout out not only Fayetteville Freedom for All, but Action NC and the organizers over there. My sister Carol, shout out to you. And then also Organize Against Racism, Cumberland County, and the NAACP.
Oh, yes.
Who's
been very vocal.
They have.
Shout out to the NAACP.
The NAACP Fayetteville chapter. What were your thoughts on NAACP weighing in on data centers and a moratorium?
I think it's good when everyone speaks up. And for an organization as illustrious as the NAACP to say, listen, this is not something that you can just rush into, right? And that a moratorium is a part of the conversation. It was very important, and this is what we need more of. Other organizations, other business owners from all four corners of the earth to say, this is where we stand on this. And so just them making any statement was very important, and I was very excited to see that. Right, for sure. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was excited. I was proud. I was proud to see that. I mean, I'm a lover of history, so I know there's sometimes been a conflict between the vanguard
yes.
and folks that are leading the way, especially in fights that are newer. And these esteemed organizations like NAACP, that goes all the way back to the 50s and the 60s.
Absolutely.
You're talking about even the tension between like a SNCC and NAACP. So that's historic. What I've seen historically is eventually the NAACP gets there.
Yes.
So where they're holding the same positions in terms of power and what it takes to get there as a SNCC or an SCLC. But to see the NAACP engaged nationally, locally, at this stage is inspiring.
It is.
I feel like this is one of those things where they recognize the importance. They realize if we get this wrong, there's no turning back, especially on things like our environment. They're making the connections between this and environmental justice. North Carolina being the birthplace of a nationwide movement for environmental justice that is ongoing. And I love the fact that we're making those connections to NAACP and that they're standing as strong as they are on this.
Absolutely. This is where I'm going in this space, advocating for groups that have been traditionally marginalized, because as I said before in the conversation, we are at the precipice of the fifth industrial revolution, and the data centers will get built. I'm going to be honest with you. I've sat in the rooms, but they don't have to get built here.
Right.
And we can say how we want them built, if it's going to happen. And so we want to make sure that traditionally marginalized groups are spoken up for, right? There are women, there are other minorities, traditionally African American people who if we're going into the fifth industrial revolution, I want to make sure that we're a part of it. We're a part of that conversation. And so when I saw the NAACP, I just knew, okay, this is the right path to take, and to start going out and branching out to find out what's happening globally and what type of competition is going to happen globally. I'm going to Geneva, Switzerland. I've been invited by the United Nations to come out to Switzerland to have a deeper conversation about AI governance. So this is not something that's just small and just Fayetteville and just our shenanigans, because we do have shenanigans, but this is bigger. This is bigger, and we have to realize it, and we have to really get inside of why the data centers are even being built.
Right. Oh, let me allow that to be a segue.
Yes.
Into something that I think we also need to talk about is the infrastructure that is supported by things like data centers, and how that's manifesting in Fayetteville. And let me also say that I want to come back to a deeper discussion, and more discussions about data centers. As this develops, I would love to hear more from you after these trips, after you learn more about AI governance and where we're heading globally and how that could impact us even here in Fayetteville. But I knew at some point we were going to have a conversation about surveillance tech here in Fayetteville. I think the tool that we focused on most here is ShotSpotter.
Yes.
/ Sound Thinking. They changed their name because they were getting too much bad press and sued too much.
It was an aggressive name.
Okay. There's been a lot of controversy here in Fayetteville. A lot of us were never on board for ShotSpotter. Named that the contract is up for renewal again, and we should be talking about it. It should have been on the agenda. Last meeting for some reason was not pronounced on the agenda, but we're going to have to have a conversation about that tool, about efficacy, about what the data has shown. We got a report from the Wilson Center from Duke University saying that they could not conclude the data center has had any impact on levels of crime here in Fayetteville. Also saying pretty demonstrably that they cannot account for many of the calls being gunshots.
Oh my goodness.
And that's something that we've focused a lot on, just that tool. In the meantime, there have been other tools that have developed and that we've given our resources to. I don't know if I don't know if there's been the amount of transparency that there needs to be, but there have been tools like Fusus. And this was something that was in the newspapers. I remember it being studied or being introduced in City Council. It actually links things like ring cameras to these, what they're calling a real-time intelligence center at the police, which uses heavy amounts of data.
Yes.
And which costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But Fusus is just one of the programs. There's also something that CityView broke a couple of years ago called Clearview AI. And that's facial recognition technology that the city is using as well. There are flock cameras, and that's probably where I see the most organized push against flock. There's been a lot of controversy in other cities, especially around where the data goes. And flock is license plate readers. You'll actually see them in things like Lowe's parking lots. I don't know what deal Lowe's made with flock, but for some reason they're there. You'll also see them on 295 a lot and on exits to freeways.
This is the same technology for the ticketing, or the tolls, rather, or no?
Yeah, same type of technology.
Okay.
I think this is something that's used by law enforcement, especially when they're looking for somebody in particular.
Okay.
This plate technology. But make no mistake about it, all of our plates are susceptible to being read, and all of our data is going somewhere. The reason that's been controversial is because other cities have found that a lot of times the data for all these systems goes to third parties that could benefit financially and that are feeding into this need for AI infrastructure or for infrastructure period, tech infrastructure. And I want to bring this up now because we have some important conversations to have during budget season and in terms of where we're putting our resources. I do want to flag that there are better ways. There are organizations that focus on the transparency piece transparency that down to the system will tell a city and the residents in that city where the data is going. Transparency that lays out policies. So the city of Fayetteville lays out all of these systems and says, this is what we're using. This is where your data is going. This is how effective it is. So it actually forces us to look at efficacy in ways that may have prevented us wasting our money on ShotSpotter and things like that.
Absolutely.
But I just see this connection here between the infrastructure and something that comes in the middle of the night, and mostly in silence in these data centers, and systems that have already been put in place here in the city of Fayetteville, very silently, and without much discussion, and systems that actually beg for more transparency. I want to get your take and your opinions on what you've seen in terms of surveillance tech and the connections to all this other infrastructure that's being built.
Surveillance is a huge topic. And surveillance capitalism in particular is a huge topic, something that I am very, very much against because it is predatory. As you said, there is a pipeline. They get the data from supposed, with the premise of, oh, we're going to make the city safe for you, so we're going to watch everyone, and we're going to do the facial recognition and the license plates and this, that, and the other. But that data ultimately goes into these conglomerates so that they can sell you something, so that they can predict your future. Let's take a step back. Do you remember the movie Minority Report?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. If you have not seen that movie, you need to go see it tonight. Okay? Minority Report, the whole plot of that movie was the precogs. And so they were able to predetermine who was predisposed to being a criminal. And if you remember, towards the end of the movie, they got it wrong. So my question is, what happens if we get it wrong? First of all, has it been working? All of this surveillance? You tell me no, right? The studies say no. The study out of Duke said no. So it's not working, all of the surveillance. And then number two, going back to an earlier thing that I said in the conversation early this morning, the greatest investment you can make is in your people, human capital, right? So can the babies read? I know we can watch them after they've done the crime. We can find the guns after they've done the crime. Let's get to where the crime never happens. Let's invest in their future. Let's invest in giving them something to do, right? And making sure they can read and work summer jobs. I don't see any teens in town scrambling to get a summer job. Right? They're out and they're having these meetups at the mall where they're just wreaking havoc and wilding out. I mean, there are other things that we can do with our money. And I think that we really need to start understanding how predatory the surveillance is, because that's what it is. There's no other reason that we're being watched other than to predetermine our futures based on our thoughts, our feelings, our habits. This is all being fed into a database. And it's being mathematically determined, which is what this book is about here. Weapons of Math Destruction. This is the book that is telling you the mathematicians are being fed into a silo where they are figuring out mathematical formulas on how to control the population in a way that's predatory. So we need to get really, really clear on who controls our future. Absolutely. Are we going to take the future by the reins and stand up and say we don't want this? Or are we just going to lay down and take it? If you're telling me that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this infrastructure and yet people are still getting, shot, killed, robbed, and raped, then we need to take a step back and say, okay, what else can be done here with our dollars?
Thank you so much for bringing that preventative element into this, right?
Absolutely.
We don't have to look far. We can see cities that are making forward progress, cities like Baltimore, making data-driven progress on what it takes to put money and resources into the preventative side. We have an OCS that needs to be built out aggressively to address what environment we're creating instead of being reactive, instead of weighting our resources in this very predatory, to me, not trustworthy surveillance system that's being set up. when you talk about Minority Report, and then I weigh it against the very real presence of a weaponized DOJ that,
wow.
as we speak, is setting up a slush fund for January 6th
Wow.
attackers. And also when I understand what is behind development of things like Clearview AI, it was built for people who are for dissent, to control dissent. It was built to control immigrants and to target
Wow.
immigrants.
Wow.
And to know the origins of these systems should give everybody pause as to why we're setting them up and why we're feeding hundreds of thousands of dollars to these companies here in Fayetteville. I think everybody should understand down to the system what we're investing in, and then what all the repercussions are going to be. That is something that could be a long conversation that I want to come back to.
I need to come back for that.
Please do that. We'll welcome you back again. I want to make a couple of invitations as we close out. Tonight is the regular council meeting at 6:30. Invite everybody to come down. One of the things that is on the docket and the agenda is renewal of the SRO contract, which we also need to look at efficacy for that as well.
Okay.
And disparities that have been brought up in the past for discipline, especially in the school to prison pipeline. There is also an important meeting on June 1st where we'll talk about not only this tech surveillance and transparency in that, but we'll also talk about data center moratorium on June the 1st. That starts at 3 p.m. during the work session, and then we invite the public to come back at 6:30 that night for public comment. So you could tell everybody what your thoughts on these controversial ideas are. Also want to put a plug in for Doug in the District. Whether you're in Western Fayetteville or anywhere throughout town, you're welcome to come out to New Life Bible Church on Thursday night. 6 p.m. we'll start the staff's way of engaging the public in the district, Doug in the District, and look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you again for everybody that's tuning in. Thank you, Tara, for bringing your expertise and bringing your passion for community and keeping us safe to the fold. This has been the Fierce Urgency of Now. Thank you all